You know the name. It's probably the most famous mystery on the planet, the Bermuda Triangle. It's this patch of ocean, right, where compasses go haywire and ships and planes just vanish. At least, that's the story we've all been told. But I started digging, and I had to ask myself, what if it's all just a story? What if the actual data, the real numbers, paint a totally different picture?
And right away, you hit the first really weird clue. This place, it's not actually real. I mean, it doesn't officially exist. The U.S. Board on Geographic Names, they don't recognize it. You're not going to find it on any official map. And yet everyone knows about it. It's one of the most famous spots on the globe. So how in the world did an imaginary triangle become this massive legend?
Well, this whole legend didn't just pop up out of nowhere. It was built piece by piece over centuries. You can trace the very first seeds all the way back to 1492, believe it or not. Christopher Columbus himself wrote about his compass going crazy and seeing a strange light out at sea. Fast forward to 1918, and you get the USS Cyclops, a huge Navy ship, just gone. Over 300 people on board. And then, of course, the big one, Flight 19 in 1945. An entire squadron of 5 Navy bombers just disappears. But here's the kicker. It wasn't until 1964 that a writer named Vincent Gaddis finally connected all these dots and gave this spooky patch of ocean its now famous name, the Bermuda Triangle.
And you've got to understand, right from the very beginning, these weren't just news reports. They were epic tales. I mean, listen to this quote about the USS Cyclops. The ship didn't just sink. No, it disappeared as though some gigantic monster of the sea had grabbed her. Grabbed her. That's not an accident report. That's something out of a horror movie. And that kind of over-the-top, sensational storytelling is exactly what poured fuel on this fire for decades.
And the mystery just got deeper and deeper, especially when even the official report sounded completely stumped. Think about Flight 19. They couldn't find a single piece of wreckage from 5 advanced bombers and the plane they sent to rescue them. So what did the Navy conclude in their report? Get this, it was as if they had flown to Mars. I mean, come on. When the actual authorities are saying things like that, can you really blame people for letting their imaginations run absolutely wild?
So, you've got these unbelievable stories, you've got 0 clear answers. What happens next? Well, the floodgates just burst open. People were desperate for any explanation, and believe me, some of the theories they came up with were out there. And this is the moment the whole thing really exploded into pop culture. In 1974, a writer named Charles Berlitz released a book that sold something like 20 million copies. And his theories were just, wow. Was it alien abductions? A portal to another dimension? Maybe some kind of weird energy crystal from the lost city of Atlantis? I know, it sounds like pure science fiction. But those ideas are what really cemented the Bermuda Triangle in our minds as this, paranormal, supernatural hotspot.
Okay, but then a theory came along that sounded a little more scientific. The idea was all about magnetism. Apparently, the Bermuda Triangle was one of the few places on Earth where a compass points to true geographic north, not magnetic north. This whole thing is called magnetic declination. The theory was that this weird anomaly could just totally mess up a ship or a plane's navigation. And you know what? It sounds pretty plausible, doesn't it?
Yeah, well, there's just one tiny problem with that. That line, it's called the agonic line, where true and magnetic north line up perfectly. It's not stuck in one place. The Earth's magnetic field shifts, so the line drifts, and scientists have confirmed it. It used to pass through the Bermuda Triangle, but today, it's way over in the Gulf of Mexico. So that whole magnetic theory, yeah, it quite literally doesn't hold water anymore.
Okay, so if it's not aliens and it's not some weird magnetic anomaly, then what's left? What are we missing? Well, this is the point where we stop guessing. It's time to ignore the stories and just follow the data.
All right, this is where the mystery really gets interesting. We're going to put the legend on trial. No more stories, no more speculation. We're looking at cold, hard numbers. What do modern shipping logs and flight data actually say? What happens when you stack up the so-called Devil's Triangle against every other patch of ocean on the planet?
Okay, so first things first, we need a baseline. What's normal for accidents at sea? Well, thanks to data from Lloyd's List, which is like the Bible of global shipping, we know that in 2021, the global casualty rate for all ships was about 1.8%. So almost 2 out of every 100 ships had some kind of incident. Remember that number. That's our average.
And now, for the moment of truth. In that very same year, more than 8,600 ships sailed right through the heart of the Bermuda Triangle. So, out of all those thousands of vessels in this supposedly super deadly zone,
How many had an accident? Are you ready for this? 2. Just 2. That's a casualty rate of 0.02%. Just let that sink in for a second.
This right here shows the huge gap between the myth and the reality. The expectation is this terrifying, uniquely dangerous place. But the reality? Based on the numbers, it's actually about 90 times safer than the global average. All those countless vanishments? In the modern world, they're statistically, well, they just don't happen.
And it gets even crazier. If you look at a list of the world's most dangerous places for ships, the Bermuda Triangle is nowhere to be found. It doesn't even make the top 10. Places like the South China Sea or the Mediterranean are way, way more dangerous statistically. Compared to those hotspots, the Triangle is actually pretty boring.
But honestly, this next fact might be the single biggest nail in the coffin for the whole myth. Researchers went through over 3 decades of data. That's more than 150,000 marine casualty reports, and they found 0, not 1, incident that was officially classified as a disappearance inside the Bermuda Triangle. The one thing it's famous for? It doesn't actually show up in the modern data. At all.
So, if the modern data shows the triangle is basically a normal, safe piece of ocean, you have to wonder, what really happened in those famous old stories? Let's go back and re-examine those legends. But this time, let's look for evidence, not monsters.
Let's take another look at Flight 19, the most famous case of all. What were the pilot's final, panicked words? Was he talking about aliens or a portal in the sky? Nope, he said, "It looks like we are entering white water. We are completely lost." He wasn't talking about something supernatural. He was talking about bad weather and being lost.
And when investigators pieced everything together later, the story that emerged was tragic, but it made perfect sense. The lead pilot, he actually had a history of getting lost. On that day, he became disoriented. He thought he was over the Florida Keys, so he made a fatal mistake. He turned the wrong way. He led his entire squadron further out into the open Atlantic, not back to shore. Eventually, they just ran out of fuel. It was an awful, heartbreaking tragedy, but the cause wasn't a monster or a portal, it was human error.
So what are the real monsters of the Bermuda Triangle? Well, they're actually pretty boring, but they're incredibly powerful. First, you've got insane weather. It's one of the most active hurricane zones on the planet. Second, you have the Gulf Stream, which is basically a massive, fast-moving river in the ocean that can swallow up any evidence of a crash in a matter of hours. And of course, you have good old-fashioned human error. But you know what the biggest culprit of all is? Sensationalism. Because a thrilling mystery about a sea monster sells a lot more books than a simple, tragic story about running out of gas.
And really, that's the final answer. That's the solution to the world's greatest mystery. Once you pull back the curtain of myth and just look at the simple facts, the science, and the actual statistics, this terrifying, mysterious part of the world becomes something else entirely. It becomes fabulously unremarkable.
So, yeah, mystery solved. But the story of the Bermuda Triangle isn't just about ships and planes. It's a huge reminder of how a really good story, a compelling myth, can completely overpower the truth. And that leaves me with one last thought for you to chew on. What other myths do we all just accept as true day in and day out? And what would happen if we decided to actually, look at the data?